How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Tyler Warlow and I go by the Mengineer. I make videos on how to improve your life through your confidence, capabilities, and overall happiness. Most of my career has been in some form of engineering consulting, which means I have to work with a client, usually some large company, and help them develop a solution to some specific problem that they're having. This, of course, involves a lot of collaboration and working with other functional groups in order to try and develop the most effective solution. And of course, we've all been there, assigned to a group project, whether that was work or school, with group members of varying levels of experience and differing backgrounds. If you've done a group project before, you've likely encountered one of the following scenarios. You may have one or a few group members that A, you either don't get along well with, or B, don't contribute significantly to the project. Or you may have ran into a situation where the group in general is not organized very well, which can lead to things like inadequate planning, poor leadership, and several unforeseen obstacles. I've certainly been in many situations like this, and it can be an incredibly frustrating experience. But the good news is that by learning these techniques for managing my relationships with my coworkers, I was able to take those frustrating experiences and turn them into opportunities for growth and success. And in this video, I'm going to share those techniques with you. So let's go ahead and jump into the video. Now, the first thing that I'm going to talk about is likely going to feel like a duh. You'd be surprised how important it is. And that is going to be communication. Communication with your coworkers is the number one piece of advice that I can give anyone. First off, it's important to understand that every person that you speak to is going to be different. This could be things like being shy versus extroverted, how they handle stress in the workplace, the amount of professionalism that you have to use when addressing them. For instance, whether you're speaking to a coworker that's the same level to you or a manager that's several levels above you. And something that a lot of people tend not to think about are cultural differences. If someone came from a different cultural background than you, some of the things that you say could potentially offend them, or they may not understand what you mean. Based on the person that you're talking to and the scenario that you're speaking to them in, you should adjust your communication style. So let's talk a little bit about meetings or group settings. This tends to be a bit of an extrovert's world. They are the ones that get noticed, they are the ones that speak the loudest, and they tend to be the ones that get the promotions for the good ideas. You'd be surprised how often people who are quiet have great ideas, but never voice them because they don't really feel comfortable speaking up. One of the greatest pieces of advice that I got from one of my mentors is if you're ever sitting in a meeting and you've noticed that someone has either A, tried to speak several times or hasn't really spoken much yet, but seems to be thinking a lot, specifically ask them what they might be thinking. This tends to give them an opportunity to speak. If they don't really have anything on their mind, they can voice that. By giving them the room to speak, you're potentially allowing them to voice some really great ideas. And those ideas can really lead to the growth and success of whatever project that you're working on. So make sure that you're incorporating good communication into everything that you do. There's, of course, many more different scenarios and examples that can be dove into with this. So if you're interested in covering that topic a little bit more in depth, please be sure to leave a comment down below and I can make another video covering that specifically. Next, I'm going to cover the topic that most people have encountered in some form or another, and that is a challenging team member. There's a few different ways that a team member can be challenging. They may simply just lack experience and not really know what they're doing. And that can be frustrating to deal with sometimes because you're just trying to get your work done, but it seems like you're being slowed down. Additionally, you might just not communicate well with this person. You might have differing communication styles, which can lead to a lot of headbutting. And finally, the one that most people can identify with is a team member that does not seem to be pulling their weight in the group. There could be any number of circumstances that could be leading to this person's work being affected in some detrimental manner. But don't just make the assumption that they're just doing badly on purpose because they don't care. Because you'd be surprised how often someone is truly going through something. And if you had never given them the chance, then you're just making them feel less welcome at work. In my opinion, it is always better to give someone the benefit of the doubt rather than assuming that they're intentionally being a bad coworker. You and your team should always give them the opportunity to correct the behavior. If you're close with this individual, this could be done by having a one-on-one conversation with them, whether that's outside of work or in work. But most often, you're typically not close with this person. And of course, in that situation, there are other ways to navigate this. For instance, if they seem to lack experience, but you have knowledge in an area, offer to train them and offer them some guidance. Of course, one thing you need to be careful with when you're training someone is make sure that you're giving them opportunities to practice this without you guiding them every step of the way. Because you might take the time to train someone, but all your efforts might be wasted if you're literally guiding them step by step. They're not really going to learn most effectively by doing that. And typically when you do that, they're going to come and have to ask you questions and questions over and over until they finally get it. What I've found to personally be the most effective is to walk them through it once or twice with your help, and then be there and watch them do it without your help and let them ask any questions that they need to ask, but try to let them get to the answers on your own and only give them the answers if absolutely necessary. If these small levels of added attention by you or your team still don't seem to be making much of a difference and your coworker hasn't really adjusted their behavior, then it might be time to talk to your management. However, when I'm saying this, it's always important to approach this from the perspective of you're trying to help the team member. Do not go into a meeting tearing this person down, especially if these issues have not been communicated before. If you go into a meeting guns a-blazing about all these issues that your management has never heard of before, and you've also not done anything to try and help your coworker, it's just going to make you appear in a bad light and have the opposite effect of what you want. Rather, you should go into these meetings having a firm understanding of what you have done to try and actually help your coworker overcome the obstacles that you're about to bring into this meeting. And when you discuss it with your management, stress that you want to help your coworker and that you're not trying to pull them down. This will help management to really zone in on what might be the root problem, and they can give this employee any of the extra attention that they might really need to address whatever the issue might be. And of course, if the problem continues from there, let your management handle it. It is not your responsibility to try and fix your coworker. It's important to try to help, but recognize that you are not the solution to their problem. All that's going to do for you is create undue stress and anxiety when you can't help solve their problem. So let your management handle it after a certain point. The next situation that I want to talk about is disorganization, whether that's the team itself or the work that you are doing. Disorganization can lead to a lack of planning, unforeseen obstacles, and of course, a lack of leadership. Generally, what I have found to be most effective is, again, coming back to that effective communication. First off, you want to clearly define what the project's end goal is. Clearly define your scope, because if you don't, you risk either doing too little or going way outside of your scope and doing a whole bunch of extra work that wasn't necessary in the first place. Second, I highly advise trying to determine what each team member's strengths and weaknesses are, whether that's what they like to work on or what they don't like to work on, or just areas that they feel like they could improve upon. What I've found in groups that I've worked in the past is when this technique is used, it can result in work being done much more effectively, because if you give work that each employee actually enjoys doing to the individual employees, then they're going to work much harder on that versus if they're constantly being given work that they feel isn't using their abilities. Now, you need to be aware there might be some work on the team that no one really enjoys doing but does have to be done. In this case, ensure that it's being divided up evenly and not one person is being stuck with it because they might be really good at doing it. This can often lead to employees feeling like they are unfairly being stuck with the boring work and can lead to them feeling frustrated or burnt out because they're not actually getting to do things they like doing. Next, I would make sure that you set personal goals and deadlines for the project. So that way you kind of have a timeline of what you're working on. Now, what I will say is typically if you're working with a client, there are all sorts of obstacles that come up that you really have no control over. So be aware that you might need to be a little bit flexible with this. And I know that was something that I personally struggled with when I first started consulting, was that I would be told, like, we want to have this done by Friday. But then, of course, I would inevitably run into obstacles where either the equipment wasn't hooked up properly or it wasn't even there at all. And I would get extremely frustrated because I would feel like I was working towards things that weren't even in place yet. But it's important to recognize that you can be flexible, you can adjust your goals, and if you just find some way to continue moving the project forward, then that's going to be all that matters. And again, communicate with your teammates often. Make sure that you're talking to each and every one of them every day. Check in with them. See if any of them are feeling overwhelmed by the amount of work. And if that is the case, offer to take a little bit off their plate. In turn, a lot of times people will do the same for you when the time comes that you have a lot on your plate. All right, guys, and that's going to bring us to the end of this video. There's, of course, no way that I could have covered every single scenario. So if you're interested in hearing about more scenarios and how you could handle them, please leave a comment down below. If you found this video to be helpful or interesting in any way, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe and join me in this self-improvement journey. If you're interested in more of my content where I cover career subjects, be sure to check out this video right here, where I have an interview with an actual recruiter to get his best tips and advice. If you're more interested in some of my more recent stuff, be sure to check out this video right here. But until the next time, this is the Mengineer signing off.